Good morning, students. How are you all? Fine. Okay, very good. Dear students, now is the session of economics. As usually, it happens every day at this time. In the previous session, I had started to discuss about the saving function and about the behavior of saving in an economy at different levels of income. The saving function in fact states that there is negative saving when the level of consumption is greater than the level of income. There is zero saving when the level of consumption is equal to the level of income. And there is positive saving when the level of consumption is less than the level of income. So based on these three notions of saving function, we are going to discuss today the next concept related to it, that is called propensity to save. Do you know, students, when we say propensity to save, then it refers to the willingness or eagerness of the people to spend a part of to save a part of their income. That means propensity to save is the planned or ex ante saving of the people, or this is their planning for saving, or this is their intended savings, or better to say the willingness or eagerness of the people to save a part of their income or not to consume their entire income. This is called propensity to save. Do you know, students, this propensity to save is basically of the two types. This propensity to save can be measured as a ratio between the income and the level of saving. That means it is measured as a percentage of income which is not spent on consumption but is saved. This is called propensity to save, and it is measured as a ratio between the level of income and the level of savings. Okay, students, now let us see. This propensity to save is basically of the two types called average propensity to save number 1 and marginal propensity to save number 2. So long as the average propensity to save is concerned, it refers to the level of saving at a given level of income, or the average level of saving at a given level of income at the level of economy as a whole or at macro level. For example, if the level of income is of rupees 100 crore and the level of saving is rupees 40 crore, then average propensity to save APS will be equal to S by Y. That means saving by income, and it will be 40 by 100 is equal to 0.4, which states that 40% of the income now is being saved by the people and 60% is spent on consumption. So this is called average propensity to save. And graphically also you can measure it by drawing a perpendicular from the saving curve, straight line saving curve, one perpendicular at a particular point of the saving curve towards x-axis and towards y-axis both. And by dividing the perpendicular by base at that particular point of the saving curve, straight line saving curve, you will get your APS, that is called average propensity to save. And you know, students, mathematically there may be three situations of APS. The situation number one, when APS is greater than 1. This situation may take place when saving is greater than income. Mathematically, it may true, but in fact this is not a realistic situation. Saving can never be greater than income. Thus, APS or the value of average propensity to save cannot be greater than 1. So long as the value of APS at break-even point is concerned, already we know that the level of consumption is equal to the level of income at break-even point. Thus, at this point, the value saving is 0. Thus, the value of APS will also be 0. So long as the value of APS beyond the break-even point is concerned, since the level of consumption is less than that of the level of income beyond break-even point, thus saving happens to be positive. And in this condition, what happens? Since saving is positive but less than 1, therefore the value of APS will also be less than 1. Okay, students. So in fact, you will find that whatever people earn, they do not spend their entire income. Rather, they keep a part of their income as saving, and this saving plays very important role in an economy. In what way, we shall discuss in coming topics. So in the economy, the value of APS happens to be less than 1 always. The another type of propensity to save is called marginal propensity to save, or MPS. When we say the marginal propensity to save, or MPS, then it refers to the ratio of the change in income and the change in saving. That means marginal propensity to save refers to the rate of change in savings in response to the change in income. That is called marginal propensity to save. And you know, students, it is measured as delta S by delta Y, where delta S shows the change in savings and delta Y shows the change in income. Okay, so long as the value of MPS is concerned, it can also be mathematically greater than 1, equal to 1, less than 1. How? Let us see. If the level of saving is greater than, if the change in saving is greater than the change in income, then the value of MPS will be greater than 1. But this is mathematically true, hardly it happens, since savings can never be greater than income, so the value of MPS can also never be greater than 1. So long as the break-even point is concerned, at this level there is no change in saving, therefore the value of MPS happens to be 0. Beyond the break-even point, there is positive saving but not uh, but always less than 1. So beyond the break even point, the value of MPS will also be less than 1. This is about MPS, which shows the rate of change in savings in response to the change in income. If you measure the marginal propensity to save graphically, then you can measure it between the two corresponding points of the straight line saving curve by drawing the perpendiculars from these 2 points towards x-axis as well as towards y-axis. You will find that the rate of change in saving is divided by the rate of change in income. That means the change in perpendicular is divided by the change in base, as a result of which you find the slope of the straight line saving curve that shows MPS. So students, diagrammatically, graphically also, you can measure the MPS or marginal propensity to save. Okay, and since the entire income can neither be consumed nor be saved, therefore the value of MPS at the economy as a whole or at macro level happens to be less than 1. Okay students, till now we have discussed about the average propensity to consume and average propensity to save, called APC and APS, as well as marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save, called MPC and MPS. Now let us discuss about the relationship between APC and APS. Since income Y is the combination of C and S, or you can say Y is equal to C plus S, so the relationship between APC and APS will be as we know that APC is equal to C by and APS is equal to S by. Therefore APC plus APS is equal to C by plus S by. Therefore APC plus APS is equal to C plus S by is equal to by is equal to 1. We may conclude that APC plus APS is equal to 1. That means a part of income is consumed and a part of income is saved. Okay students, so you can say that if APC plus APS is equal to 1, then 1 minus APC is equal to APS and 1 minus APS is equal to APC. Similarly, we can also establish the relationship between MPC and MPS. We know that Y is equal to C plus S. Y denotes income here. Since Y is equal to C plus S, therefore you can say that delta Y is equal to delta C plus delta S. Since MPC is equal to delta C by delta Y and MPS is equal to delta S by delta Y, therefore MPC plus MPS is equal to delta C by delta Y plus delta S by delta Y. Therefore MPC plus MPS is equal to delta C plus delta S by delta Y is equal to delta Y by delta Y is equal to 1. That means you can say that MPC plus MPS is equal to 1 and 1 minus MPC is equal to MPS and 1 minus MPS is equal to MPC. This is all about the relationship between APC and APS, as well as between MPC and MPS. You can go through all this better way from your textbook also. And in online class also I will discuss with the help of pen and papers. Okay, many numericals can be asked on the basis of this relationship. So I advise you all to go through this topic very carefully. Now, the last topic of this chapter is about the meaning of full employment and unemployment. Do you know, students, when we say full employment, then it refers to such a situation in which every able-bodied persons or the persons who are capable of working and willing to work, they get the job, they get the work easily at prevailing wage rate. So if such a situation has emerged in the economy, then you can say that the economy has achieved the level of full employment. Okay, and when we say full employment of an economy, then it does not mean zero unemployment. Even in the state of full employment, there may be some frictional unemployment because of the change in jobs during the course of time. So full employment simply means the demand of labor is equal to the supply of labor in the economy or in the labor market, you can say. So long as unemployment is concerned, it refers to such a situation of an economy in which those people who are capable of working and those who are willing to work, they do not get the work easily at prevailing wage rate, and they are either fully unemployed or they are partially employed. This unemployment situation of an economy can also be categorized into two, called voluntary unemployment and involuntary unemployment. So long as voluntary unemployment is concerned, it refers to such a situation of an economy in which people are capable of working, work or jobs are available, but they are not willing to work because of many reasons. So, if the work is available in an economy at prevailing wage rate, and if the people are willingly not doing the jobs, then this situation will be called the situation of voluntary unemployment. So long as the situation of involuntary unemployment is concerned, it refers to such a condition in which the people are willing to work, they are capable of working, but the work is not available at prevailing wage rate. So, if such a situation has emerged in the economy because of any reason, then it is called the situation of unemployment, involuntary unemployment. And in fact, involuntary unemployment is found in underdeveloped or developing countries mainly, whereas voluntary unemployment is found in developed countries mainly. Okay, students, so along with today's lecture, I have completed this chapter, the meaning and components of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. The next chapter is about the equilibrium of an economy that I will discuss in the next class. Thank you very much.